These are screenshots from a video showing the aftermath of an IDF attack on Palestinians collecting aid on June 1st, 2025. The video shows the bodies of several people who were killed at the Alam roundabout, one of just 4 aid checkpoints arranged by Israel. One of those tragically killed was covered by an empty UNRWA aid bag. Now, although the aid is labelled as UNRWA, it was distributed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a private, opaque, Israeli-backed organisation that has very recently been put in charge of distributing aid to Gaza. I'm going to be showing you how Israel has been using aid blockades as a weapon of war against the Gaza Strip. Have a look at this announcement by Israel's then Defense Secretary Yoav Gallant.
הכל סגור, אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
Made just 2 days after Hamas's incursion into Israel, which saw the terror group kill around 1,200 people and kidnap around 250.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק.
Now, Israel's able to do this because it took control of Gaza's borders in 1967 following the Six-Day War. Since then, its control over the Gaza Strip has grown tighter and tighter. As a result, following Hamas's incursion and Israel's retaliatory invasion of Gaza, Israel's government was able to prevent all aid from entering the Strip between October 9th and October 19th. This satellite image shows the Rafah crossing on Gaza's border with Egypt that day. As you can see, at least 55 trucks were stuck on the Egyptian side, waiting to be let in to hand aid over to the people of Gaza. After pressure from then US President Joe Biden, Israel began allowing aid to trickle in and established a total of 7 crossings from October 19th. Now, have a look at this. The UN has consistently said that Gaza needs at least 500 aid trucks to meet the absolute basic needs of the Palestinian people in the Strip. Here's a line representing that number. You can see that this number has only been met a handful of times since Israel began its offensive. In fact, our analysis of Israel's own data, there have been just 20 days where this minimum has been reached. And as you can see, all of these days came between the beginning of this year and March, when Israel began its 11-week total blockade of aid into Gaza. This means that over the course of the war, the people of the Gaza Strip have not received anywhere near enough aid to live at a basic level. Now, because Israel exerts total control over what goes in and out of Gaza, its actions have left Gaza in a position where it's just not receiving nearly enough aid to sustain the population of around 2 million people. Now, you might be asking yourself, why can't Gaza sustain itself? Perhaps the best place to start is land used to growing food. This is a report from the UN's Food and Agricultural Organization. In May, the UN warned that less than 5% of Gaza's arable land can be cultivated. Have a look at this chart. As you can see here, most of the arable land in Gaza is either completely destroyed or inaccessible. Okay, everything in the yellow border here, that's inaccessible areas. That means areas that people cannot reach because of war, because of the devastation that's been going on in the Gaza Strip. These grey bits are completely inaccessible croplands. These red bits over here, these are damaged but accessible croplands. And these tiny, tiny bits of green, these show cropland that are available for cultivation. As you can see, within the accessible parts of the Gaza Strip, very little of it is arable. And the bits that are arable have largely been damaged or outright destroyed. Let's break those numbers down. In total, across the Gaza Strip, 80.8% of all arable land has been damaged as of March 2025. That means out of an original total of 15,052 hectares of total available cropland, 12,162 of those have been damaged. The damage done to Israel's croplands has been exacerbated by the Israeli government's continued and relentless assault on the Gaza Strip, making the issue of food a two-pronged problem. It refuses to allow adequate aid in, cutting off a key source of food for civilians, and at the same time, it is destroying Gaza's ability to grow its own food, making it more reliant on aid every single day.
My name is Clémence Laguarda. I was in charge of Oxfam Humanitarian Response in Gaza from November 2024 to end of April 2025. A study from a body that is monitoring the food insecurity across the world came out recently. The report estimated that out of a population of 2.1 million, more than half were already living in a food emergency, meaning high level of malnutrition and an excess of mortality. But more important, almost 470,000 people will face food catastrophe if the situation doesn't change. Food catastrophe means widespread starvation, destitution, and death. It is estimated currently that no one in Gaza has a proper access to food.
Now, let's go back to that map of Gaza. The electricity crisis in Gaza is also a crippling problem, and again is one caused by Israel. Gaza has a few sources of electricity, but the two main sources are the Israeli Electric Corporation, which supplies power through 10 lines, and the Gaza power plant. Almost immediately after Hamas's attack on Israel, Gaza had its electricity shut off, forcing it to rely on the power plant. But the plant itself was already running on thin margins due to restrictions of fuel entering Gaza even before October 2023. So on the 11th of October that year, the plant ran out of fuel and was forced to shut down.
This is the Al Bureij Central Wastewater Treatment Plant in Deir el-Balah Governorate. You can see here a field of solar panel. Why is this a key infrastructure? Is because the Gaza Strip is not independent energy-wise and is relying heavily on solar plants for its production of electricity. You can see here the control room and the administrative buildings. This was in October 2023. Now let's have a look at the same infrastructure a few months later. This is on February 2024. These are the same images of the same location. You can see here what happened to all the solar panels. You can see here that the buildings that were the administrative buildings and the control room are completely wiped out.
As mentioned before, Israel cut power to Gaza off almost immediately, forcing the people of Gaza to rely on fuel coming in via raids. But by controlling the borders and only allowing small amounts of aid in, Israel is deliberately making the electricity crisis worse. This Oxfam report, published in March 2024, claims that the Netanyahu administration has placed multi-layered inspection protocols that have hampered the aid convoys going into Gaza. These trucks face massive delays that leave them in situ for, on average, 20 days, if not more. Now, in order for aid trucks to enter Gaza, they need to pass through multiple layers of screening. Though Israel understandably needs to scan the trucks for security purposes, the screening process has the effect of massively slowing aid down. And NGOs like Oxfam say that the Israeli government's approach to security checks is unjustifiably inefficient, leading to massive delays on aid going into the Strip. The charity also highlighted another major issue with Israel's control over the borders of the Gaza Strip, accusing Netanyahu's government of rejecting aid items by claiming they have a dual use. The Israeli government claims that items like torches, batteries and medical supplies could be used by Hamas and other groups to bring harm to civilians and soldiers, and therefore needs to restrict their movement across the border. But Oxfam also says that while some items may pass through one day, they can be rejected the next. The list of rejected items is overwhelming and ever-changing, making it difficult for organisations to figure out what to prioritise sending.
Let's have a look at this graph. Here is a line showing how much water the average Israeli consumed per day in 2020, according to the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem. 247 liters is more than enough to drink, cook, and wash with. Here is a line representing the amount of water the average person in Gaza got access to in 2021. And this is a line showing the World Health Organization minimum to meet basic needs. As you can see, before the current conflict in 2021, the average person in Gaza was just receiving enough to meet basic demands, with 83 liters available per person and per day. Can you guess now how much water the average person in Gaza is getting after October 7th? This is between 2 and 9 liters available per person per day since the beginning of the war. This is less than a single toilet flush. The average British person uses about 150 liters of water per day to drink, clean up, bathe themselves and use the toilet with. Imagine having to do all of that with just 2 liters every single day. Gaza does not have its own freshwater supply. As you can see, there is no river and it is bordered by the Mediterranean Sea. It means that the available water needs to be heavily treated, as it is basically too salty for human consumption. Availability of drinking water is completely dependent on either desalination plants to remove the salt or from fresh water being piped in from Israel. All these infrastructure have been systematically targeted by Israel during the past 20 months of war. Most of those are either damaged or destroyed, leaving the people in Gaza with scarce amount of water to drink. As you can see on this picture, people are relying on improper source of water to be able to cook, to be able to drink, to be able to bathe. These are scenes that I have witnessed while working in Gaza. In the sites, water was extremely scarce. People had to wait and wait for the water trucks to actually come by. Children were the ones that were mainly tasked of waiting for water trucks and of trying to find water across the Gaza Strip. Leila Sadat, a former special advisor on crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court, told the BBC, to take out over half of water and sanitation would be very difficult without intentionally doing so. So the pattern is evidence of either a reckless approach to civilian objects or the intentional destruction of them. These were not all mistakes, she added. During my visit in North Gaza Governorate and when meeting with the population there that had to forcibly move during the beginning of the war, they actually told me about the same exact pattern, meaning that whenever the Israeli forces were entering into an area, they were destroying and damaging all the key infrastructure, providing the basic services to the population, whether it was water, whether it was sanitation, whether it was agricultural land or health center, forcing basically the population to move because of the lack of basic services. Since the occupation of Gaza in 1967, Israeli authorities have prevented Palestinians from constructing any new water infrastructure without obtaining a permit from the Israeli forces. This, however, hasn't stopped people from trying to source their own water. In 2016, a reported 79% of desalination plants in Gaza were unlicensed. But these unregulated pieces of infrastructure face issues of quality, mainly due to the long-lasting blockade on so-called dual items imposed by Israel on Gaza. This picture shows what used to be a desalination unit, meaning treating the water to make it drinkable. Oxfam and its local partner actually installed this desalination unit in Rafah in the south of the Gaza Strip because hundreds of thousands of people had to flee the north of the Strip to Rafah and were in dire need of water. This territory was completely cut out of the rest of the Gaza Strip between May 2024 and January 2025. When Oxfam returned there, that's how we found the desalination unit that we installed at the time, completely destroyed and bulldozed. These units were actually portable and could have been moved and helped further people throughout the Gaza Strip if we would have been allowed to move them. So all these units that were portable have been destroyed, and Oxfam, but also other humanitarian organizations, have not been able to bring replacements since basically the beginning of the war. Currently, one of the only ways for Palestinians to get fresh water in Gaza is through 3 pipes that come directly from Israel. But now, for more than 120 days, this pipe has been destroyed and all attempts to repair it have been denied by Israel. The other 2 are frequently targeted and damaged, severely impacting the availability of fresh water in Gaza. The result of the deliberate destruction of key water infrastructure makes it incredibly difficult for the average person in Gaza to get enough water to drink, wash, and cook with. These photos illustrate the systematic destruction and damage caused to the water system in the Gaza Strip. You can see it here. You can see that it is under a huge pile of rubble. Probably it has several impacts all over the pipeline. What we and what the humanitarian organization have been able to do are temporary measures to allow people to still have access to water. These temporary measures are insufficient to bring adequate level of water to the people in Gaza. So this is a picture of Tel El Sultan neighborhood in Rafah, taken in April 2024. On this picture, you can see various infrastructure. Here, you can see a camp made of people that were displaced from the north of the Gaza Strip to the south. You can see here a wastewater treatment plant, but you can also see here a health center, a hospital, and a logistic hub from UNRWA. What you can see here also are greenhouses. Now let's have a look at the same picture in August 2024, after the Israeli forces entered and invaded Rafah. The displaced population is gone. They have been pushed out of this neighborhood further north. The wastewater infrastructure is almost invisible. The hospital, the health center, the logistical hubs, but also the greenhouses, there is nothing left. Everything has been systematically wiped out, whether it was a health infrastructure, a water infrastructure, or a logistic one. The Israeli forces have said consistently that Hamas fighter or site were the real target in all of these reported cases.
There's also another element to the aid crisis in Gaza we haven't yet talked about. Israel has openly admitted to backing Hamas's rivals in Gaza as a way to fight the terror group. These rival factions have long been accused of perpetrating violence against civilians and of stealing aid from trucks. In May, Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that a Palestinian militia and rival to Hamas was operating in areas controlled by the IDF. The self-proclaimed anti-terror service is being led by Yasser Abu Shabab, who is known in the region for his alleged involvement in criminal activity and aid looting in Gaza late last year. Just 1 month later, Netanyahu openly admitted he was using armed gangs in Gaza to help fight Hamas. His admission was the first time the government has admitted to backing groups that have been accused of attacking Palestinians and stealing aid. Let's take a look at what he had to say in a post to his Instagram.
בעצת גורמי הביטחון, אנחנו הפעלנו חמולות בעזה שמתנגדות לחמאס. מה רע בזה? זה רק טוב. רק מציל חיים של חיילי צה"ל.
All of this explains the current aid crisis in Gaza. But what about the future? What will Gaza look like vis-a-vis aid? I'm afraid it doesn't look promising. Before Israel banned UNRWA from operating in the Gaza Strip in January 2025, the agency distributed aid to Gaza's nearly 2 million people through a network of around 400 points across the Strip. But these have largely been replaced by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's 4 megasites, which have been heavily criticised for the chaos seen since they've been opened. The group has hired foreign mercenaries for security and is incredibly opaque, reducing accountability. The Financial Times reported that one board member referenced in the draft document claimed to have never been involved at all. You can see in this clip Palestinians who went to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's aid distribution centre at the Alam roundabout on June 3rd. That day saw Israeli soldiers open fire on those seeking aid, killing at least 27. Many of those who remained alive can be seen with heavy bandaging across their arms and legs. While Hamas says that the IDF were the ones who began shooting at the crowds, the IDF said at the time that it only fired warning shots. However, a former security contractor for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation told the BBC he witnessed his colleagues firing guns at starving Palestinians who posed no threat to them. The man said he saw a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation contractor fire a machine gun at a group of women, children and elderly people who were walking away too slowly. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has categorically denied these allegations.
So in front of this catastrophe, what can we do and what are the solutions? We need, as humanitarian organization, to be able to do an emergency response for people to access water and sanitation. But also we need to be able to repair the system. And this is the most difficult part. So this is a shipment of vital humanitarian assistance that went from the UK and that was supposed to arrive to Gaza during the ceasefire. As we are recording this video, this shipment with many other is still being held in the warehouse in Jordan, unable to enter the Gaza Strip because of the blockade. This is part of the solution that is needed to avoid water and a sanitation crisis in Gaza, is to let this key material come in and humanitarian organizations to do their job.
International organisations like the UN, Oxfam and Human Rights Watch believe that the aid crisis will only get worse from here on out, unless Israel chooses or is made to soften the pressure it is applying on Gaza.